Welcome to the annual rent certification webinar, which will cover how to complete and submit your rent certification to the State of Montana Department of Commerce in the Community Development Division. This webinar will cover why we do rent certifications, when, what they are, and how to do it. The Department of Commerce requests annual certifications to meet HUD's requirement that properties in which home funds are invested remain affordable, continue to be home to income-eligible households, that they remain high quality, and are financially viable. In addition to the annual certification, CDD staff also conducts on-site inspections every 1 to 3 years to each property in our portfolio. Those visits have been postponed between March 2020 and September 2021. Together, the recertification process and on-site visits help ensure that properties remain in compliance with HUD requirements. This year, we're asking that property owners and managers return the certifications by March 31st, 2021. The certifications will cover the period from January 1st to December 31st of 2020. Note that HUD has waived the requirement for UPCS or HQS inspections through September 30th, 2021. This annual certification remains a requirement. However, we will not be needing to know the dates on which you conducted your inspections. In order to fulfill this requirement, you will need to complete the annual certification for rental housing form, the rent and occupancy report for the home-assisted units. You'll need to provide us with an operating budget for the current year for your project, and then a project-specific income statement and balance sheet. If you have updated your lease or your affirmative fair housing marketing plan or your tenant selection policy in the last 12 months, then we will also need a copy of those so that we can approve them and ensure that they comply with HUD's requirements. In the next few slides, I'll briefly describe each of these forms. The first form that is required for annual certification is an 8-page document that's basically a checklist of different requirements for compliance. The form needs to be completed and then signed by 2 different people. The first signature should be the chief elected official or the executive director of the grantee. And then the counter signature could either be another representative from a nonprofit or a property manager. The next portion of the certification is an Excel spreadsheet where you report on the occupants and the rent for the home-assisted units. You do not need to list all of the units in a property, just the ones that are home-assisted. And you'll indicate whether they're high home units or low home rent units. You'll provide a little information about the household, the income. As I said earlier, the inspections are waived, so you may not have a date for the inspections during the 2020 calendar year, and that's fine for this year as HUD has waived that requirement. And then you'll enter rent information, the rent that's paid by the tenant, any subsidy that they receive, like through a Section 8 voucher, and then the utility allowance if the resident pays the utilities. Those 3 columns combined will be the total rent. Remember that that total rent needs to either be below the home rent limits, or if the property receives project-based rental assistance, it needs to be below the contract rent. Finally, we'll need financial documents. This will include a balance sheet as of December 31st, 2020, showing assets, liabilities, and equity, an income statement for the property for the period between January 1st and December 31st of 2020, showing revenues and expenses, and then an operating budget for 2021. We do not need the audit or financials for the organization as a whole, but for each specific property. What we are looking for is that contributions to reserves are being made and that those reserves are building up, that income exceeded expenses during the last year, and then in the operational budget, we're looking to see that the projected revenue will exceed expenses and have a positive cash flow. This review ensures that properties in which home funds have been invested remain financially viable. We provide you with a checklist that goes through the items I just listed to make sure that you have everything for your complete certification. This slide also provides the link to our file transfer service. We ask that you use the file transfer service because it is a secure way for you to submit the documents to us. Since they have financial information as well as resident information in them, it's best to submit your certification through the transfer service. When you're in the file transfer service, rather than entering an email address, click on the tab that says Find a State Group and search for Doc CDD FTS and submit your certification to that group. If you do have problems using the file transfer service, be sure to give us a call. The next few slides offer some helpful tips on how to complete this successfully, and they cover things that we typically see as issues. So in question 25 of that 8-page certification, be sure to tell us where your fair housing poster is located. Remember to designate which units are high and low home units on your rent and occupancy report. And then remember to provide financial statements for the project, not for your organization as a whole. Keep in mind that we may request an audit report if further information is needed. As I stated earlier, remember that total rent is not just the rent that the resident pays, but it also includes the subsidy that they receive and the utility allowance. Those three things together need to be below the HUD published home rent limits, and those are available on our website. I have links to those at the end of this presentation. There's a table on page 7 of the certification form, question 35, where you can report the rent and utility schedule for 2020. While we are concerned about the overall operation of the property and the financial well-being of the entire property, when it comes to income certification and rent limits, we are concerned solely about the home assisted units. So on the rent and occupancy report, you just need to report on those units. Remember, for projects with 5 or more home assisted units, at least 20% of those must be designated as low home units, and therefore they're targeted to residents whose household has income below 50% of the area median income. The remaining home units can be designated as high home units and be occupied by those whose household has income up to 80% of the area median. This slide provides some helpful links. The first two have to do with determining utility allowances. The first is to the HUD utility schedule model, which must be used for any properties that were funded after August 23rd of 2013. If you do have questions about using that model, feel free to reach out to Community Development Division staff. I'd be happy to help you. The second one provides utility allowances for properties funded before 2013. You could use the HUSM as well if you'd prefer, but you do have that option for earlier projects. The next link is to HQS and UPCS inspections. As stated before, those have been waived for most of 2020 through September 30th of 2021. That is for the home program solely. So if you do have other funding sources, please check with those agencies to ensure what the inspection protocol is. If you have been able to conduct inspections safely, feel free to report those dates to us for home-assisted units, but those are not required at this time. The final link is to the current home income and rent limits. That link just takes you to HUD's website where you can look up the income and rent limits for Montana for your county in particular. The last slide provides our contact information. Our website, email address, and phone numbers are listed there. The forms required for recertification can be found on the website under comdev.mt.gov/programs/home/common forms. Our email address is doccdd@mt.gov. Our phone number is 406-841-2770, and the link to the file transfer service is provided. That's what you'll use again to submit the recertifications to us using the state group Doc CDD FTS. Thank you for watching today. If you do have further questions, please feel free to reach out to us.